And that's how we're starting the episode.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Smart Tea Podcast, where we talk about the lives of scientists and innovators who shape the world.
Hey Maria, how's it going?
Oh, living the
Yeah,
dream.
yeah, super busy.
Yes, I'm extremely busy at schools, since I'm in school times two.
Yeah,
But fortunately, second school's going to be done in about 4 weeks. I graduate
amazing.
literally 1 month from today or tomorrow.
It is graduation season, isn't it? I'm seeing all
hmm
these like videos about people getting ready for prom and graduation and
Oh my
you know,
gosh, it is prom, isn't it?
it is. Yeah, I'm seeing all these like videos of people choosing their dresses and like getting their nails done and all this stuff.
In my head, so I saw an image on Facebook, and I just want to preface this by saying, like, I don't actually use Facebook, so don't judge
Hmm.
me. I just go
Okay,
on it
great.
occasionally to like look at some old people who
Hmm.
only use Facebook.
Oh my
Just
goodness.
kidding. The thing is, like, actually, a lot of people our age still use Facebook.
Do they?
I,
I don't know.
yeah,
I
no, but
don't
I heard you can tell how old someone is based on what platform they use.
I can totally tell that. Yeah.
Like, older folks tend to use Facebook. I think
Yeah.
like some millennials still use Facebook.
Hmm.
And then like Instagram, I think is a millennial thing. And maybe a little, I'm not really sure about like X and all that jazz. And then
Yeah.
Snapchat, I think is like where a lot of people live. And TikTok is where the like Gen Zers live, I think.
Okay. Well,
I mean,
I'm
I,
obsessed
I
with
go
TikTok,
anywhere.
so
You're on TikTok? Yeah. Anyway, as I was saying, back to the original story, I
yes.
was on Facebook and one of my relatives has like two kids. And I don't
Hmm.
know how time has passed so much, like so quickly, but like this kid that I thought was like 7 or 8 is like 17 or 18 and
Oh
going
my
to senior
God.
prom. And so I was like,
Wait.
what, number one, when did this happen?
Yeah, you're just a baby. Like
I
what?
know.
What are
And
you
then number
doing?
two, I was like, oh, senior prom. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense. And like now that I'm looking at a calendar in front of me, I'm like, oh, it's
Hmm.
May.
Yeah.
So,
It's kind of so crazy because I feel like when you're in school, your life is so structured, like,
yes.
around final exams and like, exactly what quarter it is, exactly when your midterms and your finals are. And so you're like
hmm
waiting for the end of the year, you're waiting for Christmas break. And so you know exactly where you are in the school year all the time. And
hmm
now as adults, it's kind of like, what month are we in? What day is it?
Yeah, and then, like it's weird because even though I'm in school, it's not like normal school. So it's like
Hmm.
I don't know how much time has passed. I look down, I'm like, oh shoot, it's like middle of May when that
Yeah.
happened. Did you go to prom? I can't. You didn't go to prom, right? You didn't go to any dances. Oh, except the one that I took you
No.
to, that I
Yeah,
tricked
you
you
dragged me
into.
to one. Yeah, I was not a dance party social type of person. Like I will go to a concert and I will dance. I'm not a good dancer, but I have let go of that stupid boundary that I had for whatever reason. I had
Well, it
that.
is funny because like I went to three proms.
You went
Oh,
to three proms?
I did, yeah.
Oh my God, why? How?
At my high school, it was junior senior prom. So
Hmm.
my sophomore year, a junior asked me to go, so I said yes.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then junior year, it's a junior senior prom. So I went
Hmm.
to
Yeah,
prom, and
makes sense.
then I went obviously as a senior as well.
That's so funny. I feel like in that respect we're so different because I feel like you take advantage of every opportunity that life gives you almost like any event you're ready to go to it. If your school's having something, you're ready to go to it. And I'm just like, I refuse to go to anything. I want to sit at home and be at home. I'm just like a homebody and I don't want to go to anything and do, or I don't want to do anything.
I will say I'm like that now. Anyway, so today, normally I have a shirt on that is representative of what you're going to talk about, but
Yes.
because today is a very special day, I am going to be off brand.
Oh, okay. Okay,
Do you
great.
see what my shirt is?
I was looking at it. It did look like a Lord of the Rings themed t-shirt.
It is actually a button up. So
Okay.
this
Oh,
is
button up. Sorry, excuse me.
yep. So see, this is the ring. This is the inscription. Oops. Well, you can't really see it, but I don't know why. Yeah, inscription of the ring. There's Gandalf.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There is Legolas and Gimli,
Yeah.
and the more important person that I'm trying to show you. Ah, oh there. Look, it's Gandalf and Frodo.
Oh my goodness. And is this in honor of your call name?
My call sign? Yes. I got named last night, so I have a new call sign, and my call sign is Frodo.
That's
So
amazing. Congratulations. And I was especially happy for you because it sounded a lot like a kind of almost like a hazing thing for a few
it
people.
is.
Yeah.
So fortunately, it's like we're all really close at this point, and so they're
Hmm.
trying to give you a name that you're not going to hate for the rest of your life.
Oh,
So
good.
like even when I was in the room when they were trying to pick names for other people, they'd be like,
Hmm.
"Yeah, this is what we wanted to name him, but he didn't seem to want to be that. So why don't we go with like the one that he is like really wanting?" So
Yes. Oh,
they
that's
do
good.
take your like
Opinion. It's like the Sorting Hat
kind of,
in
yeah,
Harry
exactly.
Potter.
Like they know what they
Yeah.
want, but then they're like, "Oh, okay, if you really want that, okay." But I
Okay.
don't think that's how
Yeah.
it always is. Oftentimes you get like a bad hand. And then Frodo, which came from uh my old job. One of my friends and then a couple of my other coworkers came up with it based on something really stupid I did. These names are all based on things that you do that are really, really stupid or bad. Uh,
Hmm.
the name is an acronym. So Frodo is actually all capitalized. That's why
Hmm.
yeah. So it stands for something which I'm not going to tell you until you give me a beer or a drink.
Ah.
You I'll tell. I think
Oh.
I already told you actually. But anyone
Okay.
else will not know until a
Has to buy
drink. Yeah.
Maria a drink.
And then
Okay.
I can tell you the story.
So this button-up shirt is for you. So congratulations. I'm very happy for you. But since you did not wear a t-shirt that is related to the topic, I guess I can introduce the topic. So last week we kind of did a bit of a downer of a story with Christiane Berkland and you know all of the work that he did and not receiving credit. And I don't know, just kind of left me feeling a little bit sad for him and a little bit on a low note, like, oh man, scientists shouldn't like work so hard and then not get credit for their work. So then I wanted to do a scientist who did get credit for their work. Um, and also kind of a exciting story. And so I was looking at, scientists who have had really exciting lives or have like done something dramatic in their lives. And I came across this guy named Gustaf Dalén, and at first, like, I was not too interested because it was like, oh, he did something with lighthouses. And I'm like, okay, like lighthouses. But then I started reading a bit about him. And then I was like, oh, wow, his life was really interesting. And um, he did actually win the Nobel Prize. So I was like, somebody who got recognized for their work. Let's go. So that's who we're doing today. We're doing Gustaf Dalén, Nobel Prize winner and lighthouse engineer, I guess.
It's random. I'm very curious where this is going to go.
Yeah, it is very random. It is definitely like not what you would expect someone to win the Nobel Prize for, but that's what makes it so interesting. So let's get into his life. Nils Gustaf Dalén was born in Stenstorp in a small village in Skarsborg, Sweden. Skarsborg, Sweden. Skaraborg, Sweden. I'm gonna get it. Skaraborg, Sweden.
You know what that sounds like?
What?
Sounds
Skaraborg?
like Skarsgård.
It did sound that. See, I know.
Because I'm
Skarsgård.
like, I can
Yes.
pronounce Skarsgård. So
Yeah,
it's
which is
probably
what I was trying
similar.
to say, and then I was like, "That's wrong. It's not Skarsgård." And I was trying to say Skaraborg. I'm trying to say Skaraborg, but it became Skarsborg, which I was like, that's not right because I was trying to say Skarsgård. Yeah.
Okay, anyway,
Yes. So
Skarborg.
he was born in
Wait,
Skaraborg,
what?
Sweden. Yeah, Skaraborg, Sweden, on November 30th, 1869. His mother was Lovisa Dalén. Oh, sorry, Lovisa Dalayan. And his father, no, it's like the E has an accent over it. So, like, I have to remember to say it's not Dalen. It looks like Dalen, but it's Dalayan because it's Swedish. So, his mother was Lovisa Dalayan, and his father, Anders Johansson, was a farmer. Gustaf was the fourth of five children, and interestingly, all of the children took their mother's maiden name as their last name, which I didn't think was a thing in the 60s. I was trying to look into this actually, and like some AI thing said, oh, this was super common for Swedish people in the 1800s. And I'm like, was it though? Like, where are you getting this information? I don't know.
Oh, in Sweden, a child's surname is typically the mother's unless the parents choose a different surname.
See, that's what I read. But then I couldn't find more, like when I tried to dig a
If
little bit
parents,
further
that's
on
the
that.
just the default. If parents don't specify a surname, the child will be given the mother's surname. Parents can choose a different surname for their child, such as the father's surname, or create a new surname using one of the parents' names followed by son or daughter.
Okay, I need Swedish people to like chime in on this because I've never heard of this. And I feel like that would be something that would kind of be one of those random facts of the world that I would know, but I've never heard of this. So is this true?
Oh, weird. Yeah, I'm gonna send you this link, but you can read it. But
Okay,
yes, it
great.
looks like there have been a lot of random laws.
Yeah. Okay. It was pretty much automatically expected that the children of this family would one day take over running the farm. So from a young age, that's what Gustaf was being brought up to do. But his mother wanted Gustaf and his siblings to have a good education, so they were all sent to school as well. But Gustaf wasn't really interested in his classes, and his teachers noticed this. They were not happy with his academic grades, and he was just a lot more interested in helping his father on the farm. And he liked to invent things to improve their lives on the farm. So, for example, when he was 13, he rigged an alarm clock so that 15 minutes before it was supposed to ring and wake them all up in the morning, a cylinder would start to spin that would strike a match and light a gas oil lamp under a kettle of coffee. So that 15 minutes later, when the alarm clock rang, the family had hot coffee ready and waiting for them. And he also developed an automatic threshing machine using an old spinning wheel, which they would use to collect grains. You know what this reminded me of? This
Hmm,
reminded me of in middle school when we had to build Rube Goldberg machines,
literally what I was thinking as well.
right?
Yep,
Yeah,
100%. Like I was like, oh my gosh, I remember a Rube Goldberg machine that did that, or something very similar to that.
yeah,
Fascinating.
yeah. So that's essentially, I feel like what he was doing. He was making little Rube Goldberg machines that would make all these things happen. As he grew into a young adult, he was still planning to take over the family farm, so he enrolled in a school of agriculture to study gardening and dairy farming. By the time he was 20, Gustav had essentially taken over the farm. He was able to use what he learned to expand the farm to include a dairy and a small garden for growing produce and seeds that could be sold at the local market. He also continued to invent things, including a milking machine and a pasteurization apparatus. And he started to develop connections with other people in the agricultural, machinery, and industry world. When he was 23, he invented a milk fat tester, which he could use to determine the quality of milk before selling it at the market. And this was an invention he was really excited by. He thought that it was pretty novel, and so he took it to Stockholm to show it to a pretty famous engineer and industrialist, Gustaf de Laval. And I think Gustaf was hoping to see maybe if he could commercialize it, but it turns out that Delaval had already invented something similar and he already had a patent for it. So he couldn't commercialize it. But Delaval recognized that Gustaf had a clear talent for inventing. So he told Gustaf, you should really go back to school and get a more technical education. So Gustaf, although he was initially disappointed that his invention hadn't been novel and it had already been patented, he decided to take Delaval's advice, hoping that eventually he would be able to get a job in Delaval's company. That same year, he decided to sell the farm and he enrolled in the Chalmers Institute at Gothenburg to study engineering and applied physics.
Which he kind of was already doing.
Yeah, he kind of
Mm-hmm.
was. He was like already an amateur physicist slash engineer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I guess Delaval was like, you need to like get a degree behind that. You need to like get some real solid technical learning, and then we can do something with you. So
Yeah.
yeah. So he graduated with a doctorate in 1896, and then again, acting on the advice of Gustaf de Laval, he went to Switzerland to spend a year working under Professor Aurel Stodala, a professor of mechanical engineering at the Swiss Polytechnic Institute in Zurich. He returned home briefly before leaving home for good in 1898. And then he went to Stockholm and joined de Laval's steam turbine company and worked on developing steam turbines and compressors. And at the same time, he and a classmate of his, Henry Selsing, teamed up and founded their own engineering company that was particularly focused on the technical applications and control of gases. So Gustav and Henry were particularly interested in acetylene gas, which is a hydrocarbon. That means that it's made up of hydrogen and carbon atoms. It's a colorless gas that's highly flammable and easy to ignite, and when it burns, it produces a really bright white light. So just a few years earlier, in 1895, people had discovered how to make acetylene gas on a commercial scale. So now people are trying to see if they could use acetylene for lighting and heating because it burns so much brighter than petroleum, which is what they were all using up to that point. And in fact, Gustav and Henry Selsing were able to create a new way of producing and using acetylene gas to light street lamps, which they were able to sell to the town of Ängelholm. But the biggest challenge of using acetylene was how to store and transport it. So with petroleum, you can compress it in these large iron containers and keep it or move it around pretty safely. But with acetylene gas, if you try to store it under pressure, even the slightest shock to the container causes it to explode. Yeah, so not good. So then in 1896, two French chemists named Georges Claude and Albert Hess discovered that acetylene could be dissolved in acetone. And acetone is a pretty well-known chemical solvent. Like we use it today all the time in nail polish remover and paint thinner because it dissolves away paints and varnishes. But when it came to dissolving acetylene gas in acetone, I'm thinking it's more like soda because in soda you have carbon dioxide gas, which has been dissolved into the liquid part of the beverage at high pressure. And then when you release the pressure, the soda begins to fizz because all the carbon dioxide bubbles are being released.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of like the same thing that's happening with the acetylene gas being dissolved into liquid acetone. And so Claude and Hess realized that when they did this, when the acetylene gas is inside the acetone, it's no longer as explosive. So the acetone was somehow stabilizing the acetylene gas. And so they were like, oh, great, maybe we can store it this way. We can dissolve it in acetone and it won't explode. Fantastic. Except the problem was that if there was any space at all in the container, the acetylene gas would escape from the acetone and form a layer above the liquid. And this layer of gas was again super explosive. So even if they filled the container all the way to the tippy top with this acetone and acetylene mixture, if someone like used part of it and just like closed the container and tried to store it, the acetylene gas would accumulate in the empty part of the container at the top, and you're back to having this thing that could explode really easily.
I feel like this is a Looney Tunes cartoon.
It kind of is.
Is what I don't know why that came into my head. I'm just like one of those kind of ridiculous things where it's like, oh yeah, we we have a solution now. Gotcha.
Yeah,
Still just as explosive.
yeah. Like no matter what you do, even if you take the like dynamite stick away from the wick, it's like,
Hmm.
and the wick still
Oh
explodes
no.
somehow. Yeah. It's like you thought you were safe, but no, you're
Mm.
not.
Yeah. It's like Wile E. Coyote.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly what it is. Yeah. So Claude and Hess are still working on this, and they figured out that instead of pouring the acetone acetylene solution into a completely empty container, if they first fill the container with some sort of porous material, so like a material that has a bunch of tiny little holes, and then they poured the acetylene acetone solution into that material, you could avoid that problem of having a layer of acetylene gas accumulate. And so then when some of the solution was used, because the porous material is physically taking up the space and preventing that accumulation of large pockets of acetylene gas, it wouldn't explode. So this was the idea in theory, but in practice, it was kind of difficult to figure this out because you needed a porous material that wouldn't like dissolve or break down when you poured acetone, which is a like commercial solvent, onto
Hmm.
it. And you needed something that was also elastic enough that wouldn't break or crack if you dropped the container, because if you had a big crack form, the acetylene gas could accumulate in that crack. And then again, you're back to exploding containers. So not,
Hmm.
so that's kind of where they're at. They have this idea that this possibly could work, but like what material can they use? So in 1901, Gustaf's company buys the patent from the French chemists for this idea of having a porous material containing the acetylene acetone solution. And he starts trying to come up with a porous material that would work. And he develops a porous mass that consisted of a bunch of things, including cement, coal, asbestos, and diatomaceous earth.
Asbestos, great.
But it fulfilled all the requirements of stabilizing the acetylene acetone solution under pressure and was safe to be transported around. This invention led to the founding of a company called, here we go, Svenska Aktiebolaget
Mm.
Gas Accumulator, or AGA for short. That's what we're going to call it. Gustaf named the material that he had created AGA after the company's initials. And with this, people can now store and transport acetylene gas safely, which became hugely important because all of this is happening before electricity became widely accessible. And so, in addition to street lamps, one really big potential market for using acetylene lighting was lighthouses and ocean buoys.
Makes
Do you
sense.
see how it all connects?
I do.
Yes. And this is especially the case in Sweden because Sweden has a huge coastline, and so a lot of shipping and fishing activities happening there. In this case, acetylene flames, which were much brighter than petroleum flames, were easier to see and overall made things much safer for maritime activity. But many of the lighthouses and buoys are in remote areas which are difficult to access. So Gustaf's AGA material made it safe to transport the acetylene to these locations and leave them there unattended for many months without fear of having the acetylene explode.
Explode.
So yeah, exactly. So this in itself was a game changer, but Gustaf came up with two more huge improvements to lighthouse lights that helped really cement his fame. So originally, lighthouses and buoys had continuously burning petroleum or acetylene flames, but this could be confusing to ships who might see the light and think it was the headlights of another ship. So people started building structures around the lighthouse lights that would either revolve or somehow block the light intermittently so that the light would flash. And that way you could
Hmm.
tell the difference, right, between a steady ship light and a flashing lighthouse light. However, what Gustaf did was he invented something called the Dalén light, which was an apparatus that had a pilot light that was continuously on, and then a valve that automatically opened and closed to deliver acetylene gas to the pilot light, causing intermittent flares or flashes of bright light. So Gustaf's apparatus allowed for that blinking to occur while also significantly reducing the amount of gas you needed because you no longer needed like a continuous,
Constant. Yeah.
yeah, it's like now intermittent pulses. In a speech by Professor H.G. Soderbaum, who was president of the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences in 1912, he said that before, at most, 1 liter of gas could deliver up to 50 flashes of lights, but with Gustaf's apparatus, it became several thousand flashes of light.
Pretty good.
So, yeah, huge, huge improvement. And also, the apparatus could be adjusted to deliver distinct flashes so that you could send simple messages using Morse code, or so that each lighthouse could have their own distinct pattern, which I imagine would be really helpful if you were a ship trying to navigate.
You know what's interesting is that's what they do
Mhm.
for like aircrafts now. So they have like these different,
With
yeah,
like air
so they
towers?
have, it's not air towers, but I don't remember the exact terminology for like,
Hmm.
let's consider them like navigation beacons. That's what we're going to call them. That's not
Okay.
the correct terminology, but
Yeah.
you can get onto the frequency for that beacon, and then there's just like Morse code. You just hear like
Hmm.
sounds, and
Yeah.
based on whether or not that Morse code is right, you can tell like which beacon you are like
You're near
listening to,
to,
or like
or
what
like you
what
can,
frequency. Like yeah,
yeah.
if it's like if you're listening to the correct beacon information. So it's
Yeah.
interesting because they still use the same concept for navigation
Yeah.
like today
Yeah.
in modern times. Because like even if you're looking at a map, sometimes like let's say there's clouds and you don't actually know. And so
Hmm.
um you need to have a way that's easy to distinguish whether or not you're going the right way or if you're looking at the
Yeah.
what you think you're looking at. And so having like some kind of code, it doesn't have to be Morse code, but it in this case it is.
Yeah.
But uh
Yeah. But having
I feel
something that
like
helps you figure out where you are.
hmm
Yeah.
so it's kind of cool
Yeah.
like that same concept has carried over for so long.
Yeah. This is still like the early 1900s,
Yeah.
late 1800s. So yeah,
I
it's
kind of
been,
wonder like if they did stuff like that. Because like when was Morse code invented? Do you know?
I was actually looking that up and now I forget. I think it was like the 1700s or something. It's like a long time ago.
I've seen
Um,
so many movies and shows where like knowing Morse code saves someone's life. Like the one that comes to mind is in Star Trek, which I don't watch,
hmm.
but like there was just one episode that I happened to see that has stuck with me for my entire life, where the
Hmm.
person like was no longer physically there for some
Okay.
reason, but was
Yeah.
able to interact electromagnetically with like some light, but only a single light in the entire room. And so they just
Oh,
kept
weird.
doing like Morse code. And then fortunately, someone else knew Morse code and they're like, weird. That's a pattern.
Yeah.
I think that's Morse code. And then they figured out like that the character was like was, was
Yeah.
whatever happened to them and they were asking for help. But it's been in like so many
Yeah.
different shows. So I'm like, every time I see it, oh, like,
I think it was in Stranger Things also. Like, didn't the kids like send a message from the upside down into the real
mhm,
world or something through Morse code, through blinking the
yep,
lights? Yeah.
Winona
So,
Earp.
yeah. Yeah.
Vigil.
It's
Vigil. Remember
it's
how she was
literally
inside of the
everywhere.
little in the uh in the tube and she was
Hmm.
banging with her flashlight with Morse code.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure it's like been in like pretty much every medical show also where like the person is paralyzed except for their finger or something and they could
Hmm.
like tap out
Tap
a
tap, yeah.
message.
And of
Yeah,
course
like
everyone knows Morse code, so
yeah, of course. Of course all the doctors are trained in Morse code. So, yeah.
did you figure out when it
Yeah,
was
so
invented?
so he was alive in 1791 to 1872, so somewhere in there.
So it's called a navade, just so you know. But the cool thing is, for the navades, when you have like a map, again, we'll just
Hmm.
call them like a beacon. It helps you to like
Yeah.
navigate through space. But on the map, it has like a dash or a dot. So that if you don't know
Hmm.
Morse code, if you know what Morse code is, like you can read what it stands for, but like you're listening for like a dash dot dot dash dot dot, like it'll tell you what to listen
Hmm.
for on the frequency, which
Oh,
is kind of
interesting.
interesting because like then you don't have to know Morse code, you just need to be able to see on the map, like what the
Yeah. Yeah. Technology has progressed.
yeah, and they're like, let's make this foolproof.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
When was Braille invented?
No idea.
Because like, did Braille exist
Which
before
I,
that? I'm assuming.
my God, I have such a bad story about that.
About Braille? How do you have a bad story about Braille?
Because I did a report in like fourth grade or fifth grade about Louis Braille.
You did?
yeah, I did like my report on him, but like for a report, we were supposed to come like dressed up as the person, and I'm like, how do I even do that?
Did you have like a cane? And did you pretend like you were blind?
No, because I was just like, well, I think I probably had like sunglasses or something, but like I was like, I guess I'll wear like a button-up shirt and like pants. I don't know. Like how am I supposed to dress up as that person, you know? And then one of my snarky, stupid like boy classmates was like, "Oh, I didn't realize that these historical figures look so much like our classmates." And I'm like, "What do you want me to do? I'm an Indian girl trying to impersonate like a French guy from the 1800s. Like, what do you want from me?" And I'm in fourth grade. Like, what the freak? Anyway, sorry. Super random tangent. Yeah, Braille was probably invented around the same time. Like,
Interesting.
yeah,
Because I mean, it's obviously very different because Braille,
yeah,
it's not just like, in a line. It's
yeah,
like
but it's still
you can have
like
stacks.
dot-based
I know.
communication. Yeah, yeah. I wonder if they were influenced by each other, maybe.
I know. Or if it was like one of those things. What is that phenomenon called? Where like, and this is not that because Braille and Morse code are fully different, but
Yeah.
when people in different locations come up with the same idea at the same time,
Oh, yeah. I don't
you
know
know
what
that
that's called.
phenomenon?
Yeah. Are you looking it up?
That's lame. I thought that there was actually a word for it.
Oh, there's not?
Simultaneous invention, multiple discovery.
That's stupid.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
dumb. They should have come up with like a fun name for it, like the
They
Mandela
really should
effect
have. Yeah.
or like Bader-Meinhof phenomenon. Like all those have like
Which
cool names.
I think the Bader-Meinhof one is when you learn about something and you keep seeing it everywhere later, right?
Yes. Yep.
That happened to me last episode when you were talking about the crabs, and I'd never heard of
Oh
that
yeah.
before. And then all of a sudden, I'm like seeing like infographics for it, and I'm like on LinkedIn and stuff. Like somebody did like a little cartoon of crabs, and I'm like, what? Just talked about that.
Yeah, the crab pot.
Yeah,
It is weird though, because that
it is
happens a
weird.
lot. But it's just
Yeah,
you're noticing it more because you just learned about it and it's been there the
yeah.
whole time. But has it though?
Has it though? Because it was like on LinkedIn on the feed, and I'm like, I'm just scrolling on LinkedIn, and then all of a sudden I see these like cartoons of little crabs, and like, oh, these crabs are in the pot, and like they're trying to drag each other down, and I'm like, we just talked about that. Wait a minute, I just learned what that was. You know?
Hi everyone, Arthi here. I hope you're enjoying the podcast. If so, and you wish someone would tell your science story, I founded a science communications company called SciComm, that's SYKOM, that can help. SciComm blends creativity with scientific accuracy to create all types of science communications content, including explainer videos, slide presentations, science writing, and more. We work with academic researchers, tech companies, nonprofits, or really any scientist to help simplify your science. Check us out at SciCommer.com. That's SYKOMMER.com. Okay, back to the story.
Anywho,
Now we've talked about a lot of different things very unrelated to lighthouses.
that's fine. We're going back to Gustaf. So Gustaf had invented this valve, right, that could make the light flash intermittently. So that was one of his like big improvements on lighthouses. But he made one more. So in 1907, Gustaf further refined acetylene lighting by designing a solar valve or solventil, which is the Swedish name for a solar valve. Um, and this is pretty cool. It automatically shuts off gas flow during the daytime, which saved even more gas. So the way it worked is there was a valve that had a dark metal rod surrounded by three lighter colored rods in a glass tube. And when sunlight hits the tube, the dark rod absorbs the heat and expands enough to flip a switch that cuts off the gas supply. And at night, when the sun sets, the rod cools down and shrinks, which releases the switch. So this was also highly effective on cloudy or misty days when it was still technically daylight, but the sun was blocked.
Mhm.
And this was extremely reliable, actually. The system was super efficient and very economical in the way that it used gas. So Sweden began installing them all over the coastline, including really remote or difficult to access lighthouses and buoys. Because once the system was installed, it could reliably work for up to a year without human intervention.
Pretty good.
Yeah, that's really good. And they were also so much cheaper to install and maintain than previous lighthouse apparatuses. I read one source that said it went from an installation cost of 200,000 kroner down to 9,000, which is over 20 times cheaper.
Oh.
And then maintenance costs went from 25,000 kroner a year down to about 60, which is over 400 times cheaper. So really a no-brainer if you're thinking about installing these things.
Yeah.
And of course, because it's relying on acetylene gas, it directly led to maritime safety and saved countless lives because the light is so much brighter.
Oh my gosh. Hold on. A massive ship carrying 200 people just hit the Brooklyn Bridge.
What?
Search and rescue operations are underway.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know how to
Mexican
make
Navy
it.
sailing ship crashes into
Look.
Brooklyn Bridge. Oh my goodness. Whoa. That's crazy. And we're literally talking about that right now.
About
We're
ships.
we're literally talking about ships and lighthouses right now. Oh my gosh, that's insane.
But those are the kinds of things.
Yeah, by the time this comes out, we'll probably know a lot more about it because we're recording in advance, of course, but
Yeah,
that's crazy. I hope everyone's okay.
I know. But like, don't you know that you're coming up on the Brooklyn Bridge? It's kind of big.
And it's covered in lights. But it
Yeah.
could but this is like the same a similar what's the other bridge that this just happened to like last year where a ship lost control.
Oh, yeah. But it was a cargo ship. Like, that was a big ass ship.
What bridge was that?
Uh, Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore
That's
collapsed
right.
after being
Francis
struck by the
Scott Key.
container ship Dolly.
Francis Scott Key Bridge. That's right.
It experienced a power outage and veered off course.
Yeah, I wonder if something similar happened. I wonder if something like that happened where they lost control of the ship somehow.
2 people died.
Oh no, that's so sad.
They experienced mechanical issues,
Hmm. There you go.
supposedly. Anywho, back to the
Okay.
story.
Yeah, that's a super relevant and super sad current event that just literally happened while we're talking about this. Okay. So these inventions, of course, made Gustaf's company a huge success. In 1909, Gustaf was appointed managing director of AGA, and word about his invention started spreading around the world. In 1911, his company signed a deal to provide a lighting system for the Panama Canal. So Gustaf is really riding high and continuing experimenting with acetylene gas and lighting systems. But then, one fateful day in 1912,
Oh
Gustaf was
no.
testing that fateful day, that one fateful day. Gustaf is testing how much pressure a heated gas cylinder could tolerate when something went wrong with the test. So they stopped the test and they waited for a few minutes for things to presumably settle down. And then Gustaf headed over to examine the cylinder that was having problems. And all of a sudden, the cylinder exploded. Gustaf was severely injured and nearly died. And this accident left him permanently blinded.
Oh my gosh, it's so weird we were talking about Braille.
Right? And
That's
so
super
many
random
random
though.
connections. It's like one of those things if you talk about enough random things it's gonna it's gonna come up again. Is that what we're doing?
Kind of. Wow, so did he have burns or anything?
I think so. It took him a really long time to recover. Like his injuries were extensive. And like I said, he nearly died. So
Now I want to see what he looks like. Do they have pictures of him?
all the pictures I found of him, they're like black and white pictures, obviously, but he's wearing these like really dark sunglasses all the time.
Oh, interesting. Man, that is a mustache.
Yeah.
Those are interesting glasses.
They are. They're not like typical sunglasses.
No,
They're like almost like goggles
they that look like
that are
they're like
sunglasses.
sun goggles.
Sun goggles. Did you know my grandma calls sunglasses goggles?
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Funny.
I think it's cute. Yeah, so he's permanently blinded by this explosion. So like when I was reading about him, one of Gustaf's defining traits was optimism, but this was one of the only times in his life that he sunk into a very deep depression and he thought his career was over, basically. Like what can you do? However, just 2 months later, the Karolinska Institute announced that Gustaf Dalén was the winner of the 1912 Nobel Prize in Physics.
Hey.
Yeah, so he just went from nearly dying to being like Nobel Prize winner. What a crazy roller coaster that must have been.
Was he healed yet?
No, he was not. So he's still recovering when he gets this news.
Because you said it
But
took him a while, right?
it took him a long while. Yeah. So I don't know exactly how long it took him, but like I think probably several months, if not to a couple years, to fully recover. Yeah, so I think what I thought was interesting about this was a lot of people drew parallels between Gustav's accident and Alfred Nobel himself, who was also affected by an accidental explosion in his life, which I covered in the very first episode of this podcast. So if this is your first time listening, go back and listen to Alfred Nobel's story because that's crazy. But you're right. Like, since Gustav was still recovering from this explosion, he couldn't attend the actual Nobel Prize ceremony. So instead, his brother, who ironically was an ophthalmologist,
Oh
and
gosh.
yeah, yeah. Um, so his brother was an ophthalmologist and professor at the Karolinska Institute, went to the ceremony on Gustav's behalf to accept the prize. And in his speech, he said, quote, "It is generally difficult to interpret another person's feelings with certainty, and I will not attempt to reproduce here what my brother felt when he received the news that a Nobel Prize had been awarded to him. This much I feel I must say, however, that award greatly pleased him, and that it has contributed in some measure to keeping his spirits up after the serious misfortune which has befallen him. I also believe I can assure you with certainty that it will in the future be a powerful incentive for him to continue his work in the field in which he has hitherto worked, and where his efforts have now been crowned with the Nobel Prize." End quote. But what I thought was really interesting about this particular Nobel Prize, and one of the reasons I wanted to cover this story, is because unlike most of the prizes awarded for physics, Gustav didn't win it because he made a particularly novel breakthrough in terms of like physics technology. Lighthouses existed already, gas valves existed already, even the idea for like dissolving and storing the acetylene in acetone was created by somebody else, like somebody else had that idea. He just managed to put it into practice. So all of these ideas were not his, but the reason he was chosen was that when Alfred Nobel set up the prizes, he said that the award should go to those who, quote, conferred the greatest benefit to humankind, end quote. And that's what Gustav's lighting systems did. It didn't particularly advance our knowledge of physics or create some like stunning new technology, but it helped keep so many people safe and alive and very affordably. So it did confer a great benefit to humankind. So it's one of the few Nobel Prizes I think that's not was not awarded for like a breakthrough in science per
Hmm.
se. So eventually Gustav did recover, and although he's now blind, he found that he could actually continue to do his duties at AGA and keep working on his inventions. He used the Nobel Prize money to give all the employees at AGA an extra week's worth of wages, and he set up a scholarship at the Chalmers Institute where he got his physics degree.
Oh, what a nice guy.
I know. I feel like this is a recurring theme in a lot of the Nobel Prize winners that we've seen is like they give it away somehow or they set up a scholarship or something like really selfless, which I
Yeah.
love. In the 1920s, the Aga company ran into financial difficulties and Gustaf basically lost his fortune, but he remained optimistic. He even wore a pin on his lapel that said, "Be an optimist," and handed out similar pins to anyone he thought might need a little boost in their spirits. He also said, quote, "I have so much to be thankful for. Here I have my phones linking me with my business associates and friends. Necessity has taught me how to conduct my researches without my eyes. There is always someone at home to read to me, and after that I have my radio. The theater is one of my favorite recreations." And his days of inventing were not over. So he had one more really big invention up his sleeve that came about thanks to his wife, Elma. Elma was Gustaf's childhood sweetheart, and they had gotten married in 1901, and they had two sons and two daughters. Because of his blindness, Gustaf was spending a lot more time at home recovering, and so he would be overhearing Elma cooking and then complaining about how difficult it was to use her stove. It was a coal-fired cooking range that was very dirty because it produced a lot of soot that sometimes fell into the food, but it was also dangerous, and she constantly had to stand there and watch the food so it didn't burn, and it just took up a lot of her time, like standing there and trying to keep everything clean and like not set things on fire, so she's complaining a lot. So Gustaf is overhearing this, and he began thinking about a new type of stove that would be easier for her to use. And he designed a cast iron oven that was heated by a single heat source, like a gas flame, and it had multiple hot plates that could be kept at different temperatures, and two boxes that acted like ovens so that you could cook multiple dishes at the same time and have better control over heating. The cooker only needed to be topped up once with fuel a day, and it could stay on for a full 24 hours, so it was quite a revolution in cooking. Gustaf invented this in 1922, and it quickly became one of the most popular household appliances for home cooks. It was introduced to Great Britain in 1929, and it really reached peak popularity after World War II with the Aga Company introducing different colors and different models with various oven compartments. By 1948, over 100,000 cookers were being sold worldwide, and it actually became sort of iconic. In the 1950s, Aga actually moved production from Sweden to the UK, and it's almost become part of the culture there. So, for anyone who watches the Great British Bake Off, which I don't know if you do, but Arun and I do, one of the judges, Paul Hollywood, on the show has an Aga, and he did an interview for Aga Living, which is a magazine.
Hmm.
And he said, quote, "The Aga will always be the core of the house. Even when it's not on, people will congregate around it. It's a bizarre thing. It's in the psyche. If you go to someone's house and see an Aga, you gravitate towards it. I love the Aga. I love the look. I love the tradition." So it's really like, again, what we were talking about before. Once I learned about this, I started seeing it everywhere. Like the Aga stove is in all of these like kind of country homes or traditional homes, like anyone on TikTok or Instagram who's trying to show like country living or like, kind of more traditional type of living, they have this Aga stove.
The first thing I thought of was, did they have one in Bly Manor?
In Blind Manor, I would imagine, because that's like literally exactly what we're talking about.
I know, I'm like, they must have.
Because the way it looks and everything, it's also kind of like this very traditional kind of like old cottage home country type of look.
In the UK. They
Mm-hmm.
must have. Now I have to like watch it and see if they did.
And look for it. And it would also make a lot of sense. If you're like cooking for a manor or something, you would want to be cooking multiple dishes at a time, have multiple like hot plates to keep food warm and stuff. So it would make a lot of sense. Oh, and then another one of the original judges on the show, Mary Berry, wrote an Aga cookbook, and she said that if I had to live without one, I'd loathe it. So it is still around today, and now models can run on electricity, but it is still made of cast iron. And I read that their lightest one weighs about 400 kilograms or over 880 pounds, and it can take 3 days to install. In some cases, you have to like reinforce the floor because it's such a heavy oven.
Oh my
It's like
gosh,
fully cast iron.
that's wild. I'd like to try to cook in one of those. Like I'm curious, like what makes it so good. But I mean, it also makes me think about like just cooking in general. Because I had an electric cooktop for a long time when I was younger.
Yeah.
And then when I go to my mom's house, she has like induction heating, which I get why people like induction heating, but
Hmm.
it you can't beat a gas stove.
Yeah. I think my mom and grandmother also prefer gas stoves, and so now I've just become used to that because that's what they prefer, and so that's what I'm cooking on as well.
Induction heating? Does that go on electricity? That's electric, right? It's still technically electric.
It's electromagnetism.
So, but it uses electricity. So, like,
Yeah,
if your electricity is out, because I think that happened to my parents. The electricity was out, so they couldn't cook.
correct. Yeah. Yeah, because it uses like alternating electric currents to create a magnetic field that cooks your food, basically.
Or heats up the element that you cook your food
Yeah,
in.
it heats up the pan that cooks your food. Yeah. Yeah. So again, this is like one of those things where I had no idea that Aga ovens were a thing, and now that I know, it's like literally everywhere. I see them everywhere now. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is really like this is like if you are super serious about cooking slash super rich, you want an Aga oven. So Gustaf remained at Aga for the rest of his life. He also got involved in the local city council where he held a chair for 20 years in Lidingö, which is the town where he lived. In 1913, he was inducted into the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences, and in 1919, he became a member of the Swedish Academy of Science and Engineering. In 1933, he won the Moorhead Medal, named after John Motley Moorhead III, who was the person who discovered acetylene. And I was looking into this medal, like I don't know anyone else who has won this medal. So it's like,
It's fake.
which makes sense because I'm like, okay, so he discovered acetylene, and so now Gustaf did something more with acetylene, and then that's it, I guess. I don't know. In 1937, Gustaf passed away in his home from cancer at the age of 68, and his oldest son, Gunnar, took over the Aga company. So that's his story. The end.
It's a much happier ending.
It
I'm glad.
is. It was a much more dramatic life in terms of like, well, I don't know about more dramatic actually. Christiane Berklin's life was pretty
Pretty
dramatic.
dramatic.
Yeah,
With all the accidents and stuff.
yes. Equally dramatic, but like I also feel like this is also again kind of a testament to how much your outlook can change things because Christiane Berklin kind of sunk into a depression, whereas Gustaf was resolutely optimistic no matter what was happening. Like
Oh, he did win a Nobel Prize.
he
I'm
did.
kidding.
That's true. No one was standing in his way. But like you said also, like it doesn't seem like he drove people away from him as much. Like he married his childhood sweetheart and they stayed together, they had kids and he started a company with a friend of his, like not some
Mhm.
random industrialist, like an actual friend of his. So maybe a much better support group, let's say, than
Yeah.
Christiane Berkland had.
I read a book recently that was like really sad.
Mhm.
It's called The Unfinished Line
Why were you reading this?
because I love the author. She like
Oh,
is just a really good writer. It was just like a really powerful book about mental health and how you never know what's really going on inside someone's head and like how much is going on underneath that you'll never be able to see someone who is dealing with a lot of like mental health issues. I was like, wow. It was a really powerful book.
although depressing, very
It was really
powerful. Yeah.
sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you get like so attached to the characters and yeah.
Such an important conversation, I think, to have and such a
Like when you're in a really bad spot from a mental health perspective, the
hmm
things that you're thinking don't make any sense. Like
hmm
you don't realize it in the moment, but some
Yeah.
of the things you tell yourself don't make any sense.
Yeah.
And so like it was really good. It's a really good
Yeah.
book. It's like one of my favorite like books that I actually hate.
Yes. It's like Bridge to Terabithia for me.
Oh God, no.
Yeah.
You gave me that book and I read it on a
I
plane and I was literally bawling on the
I
plane.
know. You told me that. I'm like, I never told you to read it on a plane. I just snuck it into your bag. Because I was like, this is exactly one of those. It's one of those books that's like really good, but also really, really terrible and sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fortunately, this one was not. I'm glad that this was not a sad story.
Yeah, I'm glad that he could remain optimistic and he had a really good support system around him that helped him through it. And I thought it was kind of cute that he was handing out pins to everybody saying like, here's a pin. It says be happy.
Says the blind person who lost their fortune.
Exactly. If a blind person who lost their fortune is telling you that, life's pretty good, I mean, it's pretty good advice. You got to take it, right?
Yeah. Obviously,
Yeah.
he made it through. Have you heard about the gene, the warrior versus warrior? I can't
Gene?
remember if I talked to you about this.
Mm-mm.
So warrior, Worrier versus
Oh,
warrior,
worrier versus
Warr.
warrior. Yeah.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a doctor at one point. It was like a pay for service kind of place. So like they did a bunch of different tests. So I had this one test done, it was like a blood draw to do a panel of tests.
Mm-hmm.
And so they do a bunch of genetic testing on you to see like what medications would work well, which actually has been very good for me because it's like, oh, as you get put on different types of medications, like I know what pain medications should work for me based on like genetics.
Mm-hmm.
It was a really cool like test. What
Just
kinds of like psychiatric medication can help you, or like, you know, all different kinds of things. But one of the things it tests for is for this gene
hmm
that determines if you are a warrior or a warrior.
I didn't know that was genetics.
I mean, genetically, there's always like a balance, right? So,
Yeah, between nature and nurture, but
correct. But
yeah.
apparently, this is something where like you're more predisposed toward being a warrior versus someone who will just fight through.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And
Huh.
so
I did not know that.
I am a warrior. And then it's
Warrior, you
funny
fight
because
through. I could have
I
told you
do.
that.
Yeah. Apparently, I have a genetic predisposition. And
Yeah.
then Laura is a worrier,
Yep, I could have
which,
told you that too.
yeah. But it's very interesting. So it's the terms warrior gene and worrier gene are often used to describe variations in the COMT gene, which influences how the brain processes dopamine.
That is fascinating. Oh my goodness, that makes total sense too.
Yeah, it does. Specifically, the COMT gene has variants like MET158 and VAL158 that affect the activity of the COMT enzyme, which breaks down dopamine in the brain. Individuals with the warrior gene variant, A, warrior, tend to have higher COMT activity, while those with the worrier with an O gene variant have lower activity, impacting their stress response and how they perform under pressure.
So, depending on so if you're a warrior, you're more sensitive, quote unquote, to dopamine. Dopamine makes you feel good and happy, right? So it gives you that kind of
Yeah.
boost to make you fight through. And if you're a warrior, you don't get that dopamine hit, and so you're just kind of anxious and sad.
It's interesting because the enzyme breaks down epinephrine, norepinephrine, and dopamine. Hold on. Now I am actually curious more about what this is. But I mean, it's something to read about. It's very interesting.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So Christian Birkeland was probably a worrier.
Exactly. That's where I was going with that.
Gustaf was a warrior. He fought through.
Yeah. But it is interesting to know, like, and I mean, we've talked about this in the past, I think even in the last one, how
hmm
you're born the way you are and you're wired a certain way to
Yeah.
process things in a specific way.
hmm
And sometimes that helps you and sometimes that impedes you.
Yeah.
I kind of wonder if our last guy had some
Hmm.
mental health issues, like just,
Birkeland, yeah.
yeah. I'm sure that all of that stuff, and then maybe some other personality, maybe like kind
Yeah.
of like a low level personality disorder or something like that
Yeah.
impacted his relationships with others.
Undiagnosed because it was the 1800s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
versus like Dalén,
Dalén.
Dalén.
Dalén. Gustaf.
Yeah, yeah. Like he obviously had good relationships with people, so
Hmm.
like he probably did not have as many mental health issues. I would assume that the dip that he had was it was situation dependent versus
And
like
totally
kind of ongoing
justifiable.
low
Yeah.
level. Yeah, exactly. Like low level, like man, part of it is just what he's predisposed to. So it's
Yeah.
kind of cool to see different trajectories and like
Yeah.
where people go and like think about in the context of like who are you? How
Yeah.
are you wired?
Yeah. It's very interesting.
Yeah, very different people,
Yeah. Very different.
but still both made an impact.
Technically, both nominated for the Nobel Prize, although only one won.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. If you have a suggestion for a story we should cover or thoughts you want to share about an episode, reach out to us at smarttpodcast.com. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky at Smart Tea Podcast and listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. And leave a rating or comment. It helps us grow. New episodes are released every other Wednesday. See you next time.